Hello, this is Faith at Faith and Books. Before I begin this video, I just want to make a note that I have not mentioned the current events that are going on that are quite disturbing. I live right outside of Washington, D.C. And I don't want to seem like I'm oblivious or I'm blithely ignoring it. Oh, there's my cat. Sharpening his nails. But I'm very aware of it, and it's very, everything's been very disturbing, and we're very tense because of the inauguration coming up and all that. But I honestly don't come to BookTube to discuss politics. So of course politics is part of what we read about, so in that way it's included. But this isn't my pulpit, this isn't my bully pulpit. So I come to engage in the world of books, and I'm not really interested in making commentary on, an ongoing commentary on what's going on. So I'm not being frivolous and blithely ignoring it. I just choose to not address it here. I don't feel competent for it anyway. It's just not what this channel is supposed to be about. So the next thing I wanted to say, the next point I wanted to make was that I did a review of a book a few weeks ago. When was it? Around Thanksgiving? I'm not sure. Maybe a little after. On a book called Durable Trades. And the video I did, I was doing while I was watching the 5-year-old, and I got confused. I misstated a couple of little things, like I misstated the number of trades that he went into and that sort of thing. I don't think it was my best review of a book. It was a really interesting book, which I enjoyed reading a lot. And I'm excited because another YouTube channel that I watch a lot and have been watching for a couple of years is called Townsend's. And it's put on by a guy named John Townsend, whose father started a business called Townsend's, where his father worked in a factory, and he got really interested in what trades were like before the factory. And so they started a store where they try to get homemade things or handcrafted things by artisans who have maintained, the capacity to be able to make these things. So it's a really interesting little store, and he started this channel mostly as a cooking channel. That's how he got really big on YouTube. And he does this 18th century cooking, and he has a reproduction of that type of kitchen. I got all excited when I first saw it because I realized that I had seen where he cooks, the stove or whatever that he cooks on, is an imitation of the one at the Frontier Culture Museum in Stanton, Virginia. And I've actually been there a couple of times and seen the actual one from the German home. They have different immigrants, Irish, English, and then they have the sort of the Appalachian. So anyway, if you ever get a chance to go to that museum, it's really interesting. So I really enjoy his channel, and he is going to do an interview with the author of Durable Trades tomorrow at 3:30. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I got all excited. I'm going to be watching. I really enjoy Townsend's anyway. And the fact that he's going to interview the author of a book that I recently read and reviewed here is kind of exciting. So it's 3:30 tomorrow here on YouTube. The channel is called Townsend's, and it's at 3:30 Eastern Time. So now what I really want to do is review this book. Can you see that? It's on my Kindle. There we go, Eager. The Surprising Secret Life of Beavers and Why They Matter. And I just finished this last night, and was it last night? I always forget. Time is not real, as my kids always say. But I really enjoyed it. I first heard about this book from a friend of mine whose son had given it to her. He got a master's at Virginia Tech in environmental engineering, focusing on water. And he had given this book to his mother as a gift. And so I saw it, but I didn't really look into it, but it just stuck in my head. And so I decided to read it. Finally, I just downloaded it, and it's really interesting. It talks about the role that beavers play in our ecosystems, and especially in the northern hemisphere. And he starts with, the author Ben Goldfarb starts with the history of our relationship with the beavers, which is that we basically hunted them for fur, and almost hunted them to death. And then after that, they were no longer viable in the fur trade. We just saw them as pests. So because they would build these dams and flood the fields, and we wanted the fields to graze cattle, and so they were seen as and they would come. They're rodents, and they would just go wherever they have an opportunity, and so they come in and flood areas, and so people just saw them as pests, and they would just kill them off. People would just, and they still, in many places, they are still killing them or trapping them. But in the more recent years, they've done more and more studies on them and their impact, and they've come to be seen as a keystone species. So that means that they're the basis that many other species thrive off of. So beavers do a number of things with their dams and everything. They hold a lot of water, and the weight of that water actually seeps down and replenishes groundwater. So in this country, I don't know about other countries, but apparently in this country we're losing groundwater. And there's only a certain amount of drinkable water in the world. It's not this endless supply. There's a water cycle and everything, but it's a finite amount of water. So if we lose some of it out of that cycle, it's gone. So beavers actually help create groundwater. Then they also prevent flooding. So something in the book, they said like 30%, they reduce flooding by 30%. But not only do they reduce the flooding itself, they slow the flood. So they're just better, and they're much better. They have than we are at preventing that sort of thing, because our way of dealing with flooding is using concrete and all this sort of thing, which has other issues with water. So let's see. They hold the water and they prevent flooding, and what else do they do? They, I think they clean water somehow. Is that right? And now I can't remember. There were 4 things I was trying to remember, and I can't remember one of them. But the other thing they do is they create habitats for lots and lots of other species, from plants and trees and insects and birds and fish especially. So the salmon population is collapsing, and they realize that one of the reasons is that the beavers aren't around to create this habitat where they can spawn. It turns out they're very, very significant, and we should try to bring them back and learn how to live with them. And a lot of the book was talking about how we're learning how to live with them and the different things that people are doing, the trapping and moving them to better places where they're not interfering with humans, or they're designing these kinds of, contraptions where it prevents the flooding of culverts and that sort of thing, so that beavers can be there with their dams, and at the same time roads don't get flooded that are near them. And then really interesting, there's this whole group of people called Beaver Believers, and they're this whole movement trying to reframe our relationship with beavers. And so he's great. The author's a great storyteller, and he goes all over. He starts in the Pacific Northwest, I think, and then he goes to New England, and then he goes to I forget now the order, New Mexico, he goes to California. California has a crazy relationship with the beaver because they really haven't come around yet because they're so anxious about water. But they're just starting to realize that beavers will help the water situation in California. But there's so much man-made dams and all that sort of thing that it's almost like it's very problematic now. It's very complicated how to get back to using beavers or coexisting with beavers in a way that's healthy for all, for humans and for beavers. And they talked about Yellowstone. That was really interesting because, you know, you've probably seen the video where they talk about how wolves, bringing back wolves to Yellowstone, created this new environment and really resurrected the whole area that was starting to, I guess, I can never say that word, but, you know, become a desert. And you know, he critiques that because they left out beavers. Beavers are actually part of that formula, that algorithm to get things back. And he talked about how in different areas of Yellowstone, it's still really poor in you know, diversity and in environmental health. Because sometimes it goes so far they can't fix it. And one thing that happens is when the beavers are taken out of the equation, and you have all this cattle and all this other stuff happening because humans. What happens is the watershed gets so unhealthy that the stream disconnects from the watershed. And that's sort of the ultimate death. You have to try to get it back because what happens is it'll just keep eroding, and basically it'll finally dry up and you won't have water in that area. And he talks extensively about, my cat is always trying to harass me when I'm anyway, he talks about how, you know, the cattle grazing, don't do that. The cattle grazing, the cattle basically came and ate away everything at the edge of the streams. And so there was nothing there for the beavers to eat. You know, the ranchers wanted grass. They wanted land for the cows to graze on. And so they saw the flooding that was created by the beaver dams as something that, you know, was the antithesis of what they wanted for their ranch. But it turns out they need to coexist. And so they've come up with different ways. Of trying to deal with this. A lot of it is just planting willows that the beavers will eat and then fencing it off so the cattle can't get to it and that sort of thing. There was more. My cat is distracting me. Anyway, I don't want to go too long because, you know, you're probably not that interested in beavers, but they're fascinating. So the book goes on to talk about what they're doing in Europe. They're doing in Scotland, they're trying to bring them back in the Highlands. In England, they're trying to bring them back. In Germany, they're trying to bring them back. So it's, and there's two types. There's the American kind and the European kind, and they actually can't mate or anything, even though they look pretty similar. They're, you know, two different species of beaver. But they perform the same role in the environment. So yeah, I thought it was a really, really interesting story. The guy is a wonderful writer. It was humorous. It read like a novel. Just really informative. I highly recommend it if you're interested in reading about nature and the environment and what we're learning about ecosystems and our efforts. And there's so much citizen scientists. So many citizen scientists who step up and try to help out, and that's really sort of heartening. So I enjoyed Eager, and I recommend it. Give you one more look at it. Okay. All right, so 14 minutes. Oh, my goodness. All right, so I'm going to end there, and I guess I'll see you later. I hope you are well, and happy reading. Bye.